Isabel, and I am based in Norway. We talk about democracy a lot, but I don't think it's very easy to understand what it actually feels like and what it looks like. It's written about a lot in books, and I would like to experiment together with the students on how we can actually make a classroom experience a democratic one, and enough that it can inform the future. And this is because whatever we do and whatever we learn in the classroom doesn't end just in the classroom. What we are taught, whether formally through the teacher saying something or the experiences we have in the classroom, tend to translate into how we live in real life later on, whether it's at home or whether it's in the work environment. And so the whole concept is that if we learn how to live democratically in the classroom through the projects that we're going to do, we should be able to translate that into real life experience that will lend itself to later on in life. Right. So one of the key things is the critical thinking skills that I think are useful if you're in a college classroom, but then also, like I mentioned already, anywhere else in society, because if you understand how we tend to have power, or sometimes we don't always have power in an environment, and how to use that to help others, and also how to be open to others helping us. If we're able to share and have a balance in how we communicate, to have a dialogue, which are all factors that increase when we're living in a truly democratic environment. These are things that we will develop through the project and can now exercise later on in life. It's very useful if you want to be a politician. It's also very useful if you want to be in a corporate boardroom, for instance. As someone who's someone's boss, you have to learn how to interact with your peers. As someone who's also working for somebody else, you also have to learn how to stand up for yourself, etc. And I think these are things that will lend themselves to our future, or your future, through the project. And like I mentioned, critical thinking, communication. I think it's very important to learn how to communicate clearly without so much of the emotion, but after having logically thought through what it is that we're trying to communicate, and also giving other people a chance to communicate, meaning that being a good listener more than just always, getting used to hearing ourselves speak. We'll also learn how to collaborate on the project, how to work together, how to share ideas, how to accept ideas, how to respect difference. And this cliched thing of agreeing to disagree. I think this is an environment where we can learn how to balance that and still work together towards a common goal. One of the key things will be presentation and public speaking, which will it's okay, which will come up towards the very end. I think now we can go into the weeks and how I envision things could work. I think this is also very flexible. One of the key things about being in a democratic classroom is that if there is something that doesn't work for the students, they're free to recommend how they see things working better for themselves. And it's designed to be that way, that I am not necessarily the authority on how things should go. I believe that they should be able to incorporate their thoughts into the design of how they want the things to flow. And there's a lot of room for things to change to suit everyone that would register, for instance. So like I mentioned, in week 1, we will think about the classroom. And the reason of thinking about the classroom is because it's a microcosm of society, right? So we live as people. For instance, I was always in a classroom where I was a foreigner, and I was with the locals, and we had to coexist in that classroom. That replicated my reality in the outside world because I was in a foreign country. So what I learned in the classroom, how I learned to cope, how I learned the language, also translated in the outside world. However, there were things that would go on that were great, and there were things that can go on that are also not positive, right? And I would love for us in the first week to imagine the things we've enjoyed, the practices we've enjoyed, the teachers that we loved being in their class, and see the things we loved about that, the things we didn't like, and imagine why we enjoyed those things and why we didn't. And then in the week 2, this is where we could work together to figure out, the differences that, for me, the language maybe the barrier might have been, the differences that made me enjoy actually not being able to understand the language. So as peers, to find out and share ideas on, okay, what worked for you, what didn't work for me. And the purpose for this would be so that we can imagine a school together. In week 3 would be the heftiest component where you actually come up with how you envision that school. the learning experiences that are positive, how you would then put them into practice in that school. And I would love for us to think about people from different backgrounds, for instance. So it doesn't have to be different nationality, it could be a linguistic difference, right? We live in a multicultural world where we can be in one city, people from one country, but from different, maybe even traditional backgrounds, at least where I come from. So how then we can be open to difference and the diversity, and how we can create room for those people to be able to share their voice, for them to be feeling comfortable enough to actually participate, so that we can imagine ourselves, if we were to travel to their country or to their locale, how can we then be welcomed in that environment? Once again, if we're able to practice inclusion in the classroom and democracy by being able to share and hear each other in the classroom, it will replicate into society. That's the whole concept. And then in week 4, we will actually come up with the fun ideas of what this school looks like, and how we think it could contribute to a better future for all. I think it's meant to be a fun exercise. So if people learn better, for instance, through music, there are things that you can incorporate. You just have to, give the logic behind why learning lyrics to some song would make it a better place, right, in the classroom or in the world. So to kind of stimulate creative thinking, but at the same time, creative thinking and inclusive thinking is one of the core factors of the class. I think the final outcome, yes, to understand the pedagogy, I think a lot of the people also spoke about pedagogy, pedagogical practice, and this is rooted in critical pedagogy, and basically how to understand power, the role it plays in life, and how we can utilize it for equality and equity. And so just the classroom experience, including books, sometimes all material that we learn, whether it's social media, etc., how we can use all of these things from real life in order to build better democratic ideals for a better future.